down to her last $500 and facing eviction after her ex-husband's embezzlement scandal left her with crushing debt. Jessica Reyes made a desperate gamble on an abandoned veterinary clinic at a city auction that even experienced property flippers wouldn't touch. What she discovered locked inside an old X-ray room safe would not only transform her broken life, but would uncover military bioweapon research files that had been hidden for over 2 decades, bringing armed government agents to her doorstep. Before dawn. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Jessica Reyes stared at the eviction notice in her trembling hands, the bold red letters blurring as tears threatened to spill. Final notice, 10 days to vacate. She placed the paper on her small kitchen counter next to a stack of unpaid bills and a framed photo of her 10-year-old daughter Zoe playing the violin. The morning sunlight filtered through thin curtains, illuminating the cramped apartment they had called home for the past 4 years since Marcus had been arrested for embezzling from his financial firm, leaving her to face the consequences alone. At 36, Jessica had never imagined finding herself in this position. With a degree in veterinary technology and years of experience working in research laboratories, she once had promising career prospects. But when Zoe was diagnosed with severe respiratory issues at age 6, Jessica had scaled back to part-time work to manage her daughter's frequent medical appointments. Marcus's criminal charges and subsequent imprisonment had been the final blow to their already struggling finances. "Mom, are you sad again?" Zoe's voice came from the hallway, her favorite stuffed panda clutched against her blue pajamas. Jessica quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, just thinking. How about some breakfast before school?" As she poured cereal for her daughter, Jessica's mind raced through increasingly desperate options. Her parents lived on fixed incomes in another state. Her brother was struggling with his own financial problems, and she'd already maxed out her credit cards. The $500 emergency fund she'd managed to preserve despite everything was all that stood between them and homelessness. "Ms. Reyes?" Zoe's school counselor had called the previous afternoon. Zoe fell asleep during math class again today. Her teacher mentioned this is the 4th time this week. "Is everything all right at home?" Jessica had mumbled reassurances about late nights and promised to enforce an earlier bedtime, not mentioning that Zoe's bedroom shared a wall with neighbors who argued loudly until the early morning hours. The thin walls provided little barrier against the noise or the cooking fumes that triggered Zoe's breathing problems. After dropping Zoe at school, Jessica sat in her 15-year-old Honda scrolling through rental listings on her phone. Everything within commuting distance of Zoe's school and her part-time lab job was far beyond her budget. As she was about to close the browser in defeat, an unusual advertisement caught her eye. City property auction. Former Westside Veterinary Clinic, 4,200 square feet with parking lot. Starting bid, $500, property sold as is. The listing included photos of a small, dilapidated one-story building with boarded windows, overgrown landscaping, and a cracked parking lot. According to the description, the property had been seized for unpaid taxes after sitting vacant for nearly 7 years. The auction was scheduled for the following morning. Westside was a struggling neighborhood about 20 minutes from there. Current apartment, still within manageable commuting distance to Zoe's school. Property that cheap would mean no mortgage, just property taxes she could hopefully manage with her part-time income. The obvious downside was that the building looked like it needed significant work, but it had once been a veterinary clinic, a space Jessica understood intimately from her professional background. Jessica clicked through to the city assessor's website, finding more details about the property. The clinic was listed as approximately 4,200 square feet, built in 1982 but renovated in 2005. It had city utilities and commercial zoning that allowed for mixed-use development. The property had been owned by a company called Meridian Veterinary Services until 2016, after which it had remained vacant and eventually been seized for unpaid taxes. For the rest of the day, Jessica could think of nothing else. That night, after tucking Zoe into bed, she researched commercial property ownership, renovation costs, and the West Side neighborhood. The area was in transition, with some signs of rejuvenation alongside lingering urban decay. The air quality was questionable with its proximity to the industrial district, but better than their current situation near the highway. It was madness. Jessica knew. Buying a rundown commercial building with her last dollars when she had no renovation experience and limited construction skills was the definition of a desperate gamble. And yet, the alternative, becoming homeless with Zoe, or moving to an even more dangerous neighborhood they could afford, seemed worse. By morning, her decision was made. If nothing else, they would have a roof over their heads and walls that were theirs. Worst case, she could sell the property if the market improved, or use it as collateral for a small loan to find something more suitable. "We're going on an adventure today," she told Zoe, who bounced excitedly in the passenger seat as they drove to City Hall after breakfast. The auction room was surprisingly crowded, but most attendees seemed interested in residential properties and retail spaces in more desirable neighborhoods. When the auctioneer announced the West Side Veterinary Clinic, Jessica's heart raced as she raised her bidding paddle. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "We have $500 from bidder number 27, the auctioneer announced. "Do I hear $600? Jessica held her breath, expecting competition despite the property's condition. To her surprise, no other bids materialized. "Going once, going twice," the auctioneer paused, scanning the room. "Sold to bidder 27 for $500. As Jessica signed the paperwork and transferred nearly every dollar from her account, the city clerk, an older man named Mr. Gonzalez, gave her a curious look. "The old West Side Clinic, huh?" he said quietly, sliding the deed across the counter. "You know there's a reason nobody bid against you." Jessica paused. "What do you mean?" Mr. Gonzalez glanced around as if checking who might be listening. "That property's got a complicated history. Dr. Hawkins, the last owner, wasn't just a regular veterinarian. Government contracts, they said. People reported unusual activities there for years. Strange deliveries at night, security measures excessive for a neighborhood vet clinic." He lowered his voice further. "Some say he was working on classified research. After the clinic closed, there were people in dark suits asking questions around the neighborhood." Jessica felt a chill despite the warmth of the City Hall building. "I'm sure it's just urban legends," she said with more confidence than she felt. Mr. Gonzalez shrugged. "Probably so. Just thought you should know what you're getting into." He hesitated, then added, "My cousin does electrical work if you need help with repairs. His card is in the information packet." Zoe was ecstatic when Jessica explained they would be moving to their own building. "Can we live in a vet clinic? Where will the animals stay? Can we keep pets now?" she asked, bouncing in her seat as they drove toward their new property. "It's not a working clinic anymore, sweetheart," Jessica said cautiously. "First we need to make it livable. But yes, maybe we can have a pet once we're settled." When they pulled into the cracked parking lot, marked by a faded sign reading West Side Veterinary Clinic, the reality of her purchase hit Jessica full force. The single-story building stood desolate and forbidding, its brick exterior stained with years of neglect. Several windows were boarded up, while others had been covered with heavy security screens. The small landscaped areas were overgrown with weeds, and graffiti marked one side of the building. "It looks creepy," Zoe declared with the enthusiasm only a 10-year-old could muster for such a description. "It just needs some love," Jessica replied, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. And it's ours. Around the building, a chain-link fence enclosed what had once been a small parking area for staff. A larger lot in front had spaces for what would have been client parking. A metal shed stood at the back of the property, its door secured with a heavy padlock. "Oh, what have I gotten us into?" she whispered as she parked her Honda and stepped out, her shoes crunching on broken asphalt. Zoe had no such reservations, immediately racing toward a gnarled oak tree at the edge of the property. "Mom, can this be my climbing tree?" Despite the dilapidation, there was something undeniably appealing about owning a space this size after years in a tiny apartment. The building, while neglected, had a solid presence. No traffic noise directly against their windows, no neighbors sharing their walls, no cooking fumes from adjacent apartments. Just space that was theirs. Taking a deep breath, Jessica climbed the concrete steps and tried the front door. It was locked, but the key the city clerk had given her turned smoothly in the mechanism. The door swung open with a dramatic creak that would have been at home in any haunted house film. "Zoe, stay close to me," Jessica called. "We need to check if everything is safe before running around." Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like macabre decorations, and the floor was littered with debris. The reception area was still recognizable with its built-in desk and waiting room chairs bolted to the floor. Beyond that, examination rooms lined a hallway, their doors hanging open to reveal empty spaces where medical equipment had once stood. Jessica's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, highlighting the clinic's layout. The front section contained the reception area, waiting room, and 4 exam rooms. Beyond that was what appeared to be a surgical suite, complete with drainage. In the floor and connections for medical gases in the walls. Further back, offices and storage rooms lined another hallway. Everything of value had been removed: medical equipment, computers, supplies, but the basic infrastructure remained. The building had clearly been designed specifically as a veterinary clinic with specialized plumbing, electrical systems, and room configurations. "Wait here, Zoe. I need to check if it's safe in the back," Jessica said, her flashlight beam revealing more hallways beyond the main clinical areas. Carefully navigating through the abandoned clinic, Jessica discovered a break room with built-in cabinets, a staff bathroom, and 2 offices. The larger office, presumably once belonging to Dr. Hawkins, contained a heavy desk bolted to the floor, and empty bookshelves lining one wall. At the very back of the building, a heavy door marked X-ray caught her attention. Radiology rooms in veterinary clinics were typically constructed with lead-lined walls for radiation safety, making them among the most expensive spaces to build. This door was different from the others, thicker, with a more sophisticated lock. The key from the city clerk didn't work on this door. Jessica made a mental note to check if other keys were included in the property documentation she'd received. "Definitely need to get the electricity turned on," she muttered to herself, trying to break the eerie silence. Her voice sounded strange in the empty building, as if the walls were absorbing the sound. Coming back to the front, she found Zoe, peering through a door she hadn't noticed earlier, half hidden behind the reception desk. "Mom, there's another room down here," Zoe called excitedly. Jessica approached cautiously, shining her light into what appeared to be a storage area. Metal shelving units lined the walls, empty except for a few abandoned supplies, paper towels, cleaning products, and what looked like animal food containers. "Long since emptied. Stay up here, Zoe. I'll check it out quickly." The storage room was larger than she'd expected, extending beneath what must have been the entire reception area. As Jessica played her flashlight around the space, she noticed something odd. A section of the back wall was different, newer drywall that didn't quite match the rest of the construction. Moving closer, she could see faint seams where the wall had been patched. Pressing experimentally, she felt a section give slightly under her touch. With a soft scraping sound, A portion of the wall moved inward. "Mom?" Zoe called from the top of the stairs. "Are you okay?" "I heard a weird noise." "I'm fine, sweetie," Jessica replied, her mind racing. "Just some old shelves settling. Why don't you explore the waiting room while I finish down here?" After making sure Zoe had retreated, Jessica turned back to the partially open section of wall. Common sense told her to leave it alone. Hidden rooms in abandoned buildings were the stuff of horror movies, after all. But curiosity and a strange sense that this might explain why the property had been so cheap propelled her forward. Using her phone flashlight, she managed to pull the section of wall open wider. Beyond was not another storage room, as she might have expected, but a narrow passage leading to a metal door with a keypad lock. This was no amateur construction. It looked professional, almost like a secure entry to a research area. Jessica took a tentative step into the passage, her flashlight beam revealing that it extended about 10 feet before ending at the metal door. The air was surprisingly fresh, suggesting some kind of ventilation system still functioning. This was well beyond typical storage for a veterinary clinic. This was something else entirely. Remembering Zoe upstairs, Jessica reluctantly backed out of the passage and carefully closed the hidden wall section. Her mind was buzzing with questions. What had Dr. Hawkins been hiding behind that secure door? Was this the classified research Mr. Gonzalez had mentioned? And more importantly, was it dangerous? Jessica spent the remainder of the daylight hours making a list of immediate repairs needed to make the building habitable. The electricity was disconnected, the plumbing questionable, and several windows needed replacement, but the structure seemed solid and the roof, while needing repairs, wasn't catastrophically damaged. By sunset, she had cleared enough debris from the break room to create a camping space for their first night. She hung sheets over the boarded windows to keep out the draft and arranged their sleeping bags on the floor. "It's like indoor camping," Zoe declared, her earlier enthusiasm undimmed by the building's condition. As darkness fell, the clinic came alive with unfamiliar sounds, the creaking of the structure, the rustling of small creatures in the walls, and the whisper of wind through broken windows. Zoe fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the excitement of the day, but Jessica lay awake, her mind returning repeatedly to the hidden passage and the secure door she'd discovered. What lay beyond that metal door? Had she inadvertently purchased not just a rundown clinic, but something far more complicated? And if Dr. Hawkins had indeed been involved with government research, as Mr. Gonzalez suggested, was the facility down there something official? When morning light finally filtered through the sheet-covered windows, Jessica had made up her mind. Before doing anything else, she needed to know what was hidden in her new property. She couldn't make plans for their future here without understanding what that secure door might conceal. After a breakfast of granola bars and bottled water, Jessica set up Zoe with her tablet and some books in the waiting room, where patches of sunlight made the space less gloomy. "I need to check something in the storage room, Zoe. Stay right here, okay? Don't go wandering around without me." "Okay, Mom," Zoe agreed absently, already absorbed in her game. Jessica descended into the storage room again, this time carrying a better flashlight she'd retrieved from her car emergency kit. The hidden wall panel looked like part of the regular wall when closed, with only the faintest outline visible if you knew to look for it. She pressed the spot she'd discovered yesterday, and once again, the section of wall swung inward with a soft scraping sound. With a deep breath, Jessica stepped into the narrow passage, her flashlight illuminating the metal door ahead. The keypad lock stared back at her, a challenge she hadn't anticipated. Without electricity, the electronic lock should have been inactive, but a small green light indicated it was running on some kind of backup power. She would need a code to get through. Disappointed but not deterred, Jessica returned to the storage room, carefully closing the hidden panel behind her. As she turned to leave, her flashlight beam caught something she'd missed before, a small metal box attached to the underside of the lowest shelf. Crouching down, Jessica examined the box. It wasn't locked, just latched shut. Inside, she found a small notebook, a set of keys on a ring, and what appeared to be an access card with no identifying marks. The notebook contained what looked like maintenance logs, written in cramped handwriting with dates, times, and cryptic notations. The most recent entry was dated June 2016, just before the clinic had closed. At the back of the notebook was a series of codes, including what appeared to be a 6-digit number labeled SEC-R with the notation, "Change monthly last updated the 10th of June 16. Heart pounding. Jessica returned to the hidden passage with the access card and the notebook. At the metal door, she tried the 6-digit code on the keypad. Nothing happened. She tried again, carefully pressing each number. Still nothing. Then she noticed a card reader next to the keypad. She swiped the blank access card, and the reader's light turned from red to green. When she entered the code again, the lock clicked, and the door opened with a soft hiss. Beyond the door lay a space Jessica could never have imagined existing beneath a neighborhood veterinary clinic. A laboratory roughly 30 feet square, with stainless steel counters, specialized equipment bolted to the floors and walls, and what appeared to be a separate containment area with its own ventilation system. Unlike the abandoned clinic above, his space wasn't stripped bare. Microscopes, centrifuges, refrigeration units, and other scientific equipment remained in place, covered with dust sheets. Computer monitors sat dark on the counters, their keyboards sealed in plastic coverings. This was no standard veterinary laboratory for running blood tests or analyzing samples. The equipment was sophisticated, research grade, and far beyond what any neighborhood animal clinic would require. The containment area, with its negative pressure system and specialized airlocks, suggested work with potentially hazardous materials. Jessica moved deeper into the laboratory, her veterinary technology training allowing her to recognize most of the equipment, though some devices were unfamiliar to her. A large metal cabinet dominated one corner of the room. Unlike the other furnishings, it was locked with a traditional key lock rather than an electronic system. Jessica tried the keys from the metal box one by one. The third key slid in smoothly, and the cabinet unlocked with a satisfying click. Inside were dozens of file folders, labeled and organized by date and project name. The titles meant little to her: Project Cerberus, Operation Chimera, Helios Protocol, but the security classification stamped on them sent a chill down her spine. Classified, restricted access, need to know only. She pulled out one folder labeled Helios Summary 2015 and opened it. The top sheet was headed Biological Agent Advancement Program Quarterly Report. The technical language was beyond her, but phrases like Enhanced Pathogen Delivery System and Species-Specific Targeting Mechanisms jumped out. This wasn't just research, it was military bioweapon development. Continuing her exploration, Jessica discovered another door at the far side of the laboratory. Unlike the entrance, this door wasn't electronically secured. It had a standard lock that one of her newly discovered keys opened. Beyond this door lay another surprise, a small living quarters complete with a cot, minimal kitchen facilities, and a compact bathroom. Clearly, this facility had been designed for personnel to remain underground for extended periods if necessary. As Jessica examined the living area, her foot knocked against something that skittered across the floor. Directing her flashlight toward the sound, she discovered a small safe, about the size of a shoebox, partially hidden under the cot. Just as she bent to retrieve it, a distant sound froze her in place. Car engines, more than one, coming into her parking lot. Jessica's heart raced. It was barely 7:30 a.m. Who would be visiting the abandoned clinic at this hour? Remembering Mr. Gonzalez's mention of people in dark suits asking questions, she felt a wave of apprehension. Quickly grabbing the small safe, Jessica hurried back. through the laboratory, securing the cabinet of files and exiting through the metal door. She made sure it locked behind her, then closed the hidden wall panel carefully, making sure it settled back into its disguised position. "Zoe," she called, trying to keep panic from her voice as she emerged from the storage room. "Someone's here." Through the front windows, she could see 3 unmarked black SUVs pulling into her parking lot. As they parked, several men in what appeared to be tactical gear emerged, along with 2 individuals in business attire. "Mom, why are those men carrying guns?" Zoe asked, eyes wide as she peered through the window. "I don't know, sweetie," Jessica replied, her mind racing, "but I want you to go to the break room and stay there while I talk to them, okay?" Once Zoe had reluctantly retreated, Jessica smoothed her hair, took a deep breath, and went to the front door. Before she could reach it, a firm knock sounded. Opening the door, she found herself face to face with a tall woman in her 50s, wearing a dark suit with an air of unmistakable authority. Behind her stood several men in tactical gear, their expressions professional but alert. "Ms. Jessica Reyes?" the woman asked, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Yes," Jessica replied, her mouth suddenly dry. "I'm Agent Deanna Foster, Department of Homeland Security. We need to speak with you regarding this property." Jessica's blood ran cold as she faced Agent Foster. How had Homeland Security found her so quickly? She hadn't told anyone about the hidden laboratory or the classified files. She'd only discovered them herself hours ago. "May I see some identification, please?" she asked, buying time to collect her thoughts. Agent Foster produced an official identification card, which Jessica examined carefully. It appeared genuine, though she had limited experience with government credentials. "What is this regarding?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's a matter of national security." Agent Foster replied. "May we come in?" Jessica hesitated. She had no legal grounds to refuse, and antagonizing government officials seemed unwise, but she also felt protective of her new property and concerned about Zoe. "My daughter is inside," she said. "I'd appreciate if we could speak privately." First, Agent Foster nodded to one of her colleagues, who returned to the lead vehicle. The others maintained their positions, scanning the property with practiced eyes. "Ms. Reyes," Foster began, "our records indicate you purchased this property yesterday at a city auction. Is that correct?" "Yes," Jessica confirmed. "It was formally transferred to me yesterday afternoon." "Were you aware of the property's history when you made this purchase?" Jessica considered her answer carefully. The city clerk mentioned the previous owner was possibly involved in government contracts and somewhat secretive. "That's all I know." Foster studied her face, seeming to assess her truthfulness. The previous owner, Dr. Alexander Hawkins, was a veterinary pathologist contracted by certain government agencies. This property contains a classified research facility that was never fully decommissioned according to protocol. Jessica feigned surprise, though her racing heart made it difficult to appear calm. "A research facility? Here? I had no idea." "Ms. Reyes, I'll be direct," Foster continued. "Our monitoring systems detected an access event at this location early this morning. The secure door to the laboratory was open for the first time in nearly 7 years. Given that you just took possession of the property yesterday, I assume it was you who found and entered the facility." The revelation that they had monitoring systems still active in the abandoned clinic stunned Jessica. She considered denying it for a moment, but the evidence was clearly against her. "Yes," she admitted. "I found a hidden entrance in the storage room this morning and investigated. I was trying to understand what I'd purchased." A man in a dark suit stepped forward. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Dr. William Thorne, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency," he said. "What exactly did you see in the facility, Ms. Reyes?" A laboratory with equipment, some file cabinets, and a small living space, Jessica replied, trying to downplay her discoveries. Nothing that seemed operational, Agent. Foster and Dr. Thorne exchanged glances. The West Side facility was part of a classified biological research program established in 2008, Dr. Thorne explained. While officially shut down in 2016 following budget reallocations, certain aspects of the research conducted there remain. Highly sensitive, Jessica's curiosity overcame her caution. Biological research? You mean like diseases? The terminology we prefer is advanced biological agent countermeasures, Dr. Thorne corrected. Dr. Hawkins was stationed here to develop defensive technologies against potential biological threats to national security. Before Jessica could digest this information, Zoe appeared in the doorway behind her. "Mom, I'm hungry," she announced, then froze as she noticed the armed personnel. Her eyes widened. "Are you police officers?" Agent Foster's stern expression softened slightly at the sight of the child. "Not exactly, and you must be Zoe." Jessica tensed instinctively, moving closer to her daughter. "How do you know my daughter's name?" "Standard background check when unauthorized access occurs at a government site," Foster explained. "We had to verify who had taken possession of the property." "Mom found a secret door in the storage room," Zoe said excitedly, seemingly unperturbed by the government presence. "It was super cool." Dr. Thorne raised an eyebrow. "Children are remarkably observant, aren't they? Ms. Reyes, we need to secure and remove certain materials from the facility. Your cooperation would be appreciated." Jessica considered her options. These people clearly knew far more about the hidden laboratory than she did, and they had the authority to insist on access, regardless of her wishes. "Of course," she said finally. "But I'd like to understand what's happening on my property." Foster nodded. "That's reasonable. Dr. Thorne will provide an explanation while my team performs the necessary retrieval operation." At her signal, 4 of the tactical personnel grabbed equipment from the SUVs and headed toward the building. Jessica led them to the storage room entrance, showing them the hidden wall panel. They disappeared into the passage with their gear, leaving Jessica, Zoe, Agent Foster, and Dr. Thorne in the reception area. "Can we talk outside?" Jessica suggested, not wanting Zoe to hear potentially frightening information. "Zoe, honey, can you stay here and draw a picture of our new building?" Once they were on the front steps, Jessica turned to Dr. Thorne. "So Dr. Hawkins was developing biological weapons?" Dr. Thorne considered his words carefully. "In the early 2000s, following certain terrorism events, our nation accelerated research into biological threat assessment and countermeasure development. The isolation and specialized equipment at this location made it ideal for conducting controlled research with minimal risk. And now, why is this still important years later? The research conducted here identified certain biological mechanisms that remain relevant to current defense systems," Thorne replied. "Additionally, some of the methodologies Dr. Hawkins helped develop are still classified." Jessica processed this information, suspecting she wasn't getting the full story. "Is it dangerous? Should I be concerned about living here with my daughter?" Agent Foster rejoined the conversation. "The facility itself isn't dangerous. It was properly decontaminated when operations ceased. However, its existence is still classified, which is why we responded immediately when the monitoring systems detected access." "How did you know so?" Quickly, Jessica asked. "Those systems must be running on some power source, but the building doesn't even have electricity. The monitoring system operates on an independent power supply," Dr. Thorne explained. "It was designed to function autonomously for extended periods if necessary." A thought occurred to Jessica. "If this is classified, am I even allowed to know about it? Are you going to make me sign some non-disclosure agreement or something?" Foster nodded. "Precisely. We have documents for you to sign acknowledging. You're aware of the facility, but agreeing not to discuss its existence or purpose with anyone. The absurdity of the situation suddenly struck Jessica. 24 hours ago, she'd been facing eviction. Now she was standing on the steps of her dilapidated veterinary clinic discussing classified government research with Homeland Security personnel. And if I don't sign, the property would likely be reclaimed under national security provisions. Foster said bluntly, "You'd be compensated for your purchase price, but you'd lose the building." Jessica felt a surge of protectiveness. Despite its condition, this place represented her desperate bid for stability. A home where Zoe might breathe easier, where they could build something of their own. What about the facility itself? Will you be removing it completely? Dr. Thorne shook his head. The basic structure will remain. It would be too disruptive to remove it entirely. We're only concerned with specific equipment and documentation. Jessica considered this. So I'd have an underground laboratory on my property. That could actually be useful for something. Not precisely a laboratory, Dr. Thorne corrected. But yes, the room and basic infrastructure would remain intact, though I should note that official access would be permanently sealed. One of the tactical team members emerged from the building and approached Agent Foster. They conversed quietly before Foster turned back to Jessica. My team reports that a small safe appears to be missing from the living quarters. The dust patterns suggest it was recently moved. Ms. Reyes, was anything removed from the facility? Jessica's stomach tightened. As I mentioned, I briefly explored this morning. I didn't take anything. The small safe she'd grabbed just before their arrival felt suddenly heavy in her knowledge, though it was actually hidden under her sleeping bag in the break room. Foster didn't appear convinced but didn't press further. We'll be removing the sensitive materials today. Dr. Thorne will remain to brief you on the non-disclosure agreements and address any questions you might have. Over the next several hours, Jessica watched as the government team carried various equipment and file boxes from the hidden laboratory to their vehicles. Zoe, fascinated by the proceedings, peppered everyone with questions when allowed near the activity. "Are you secret agents?" she asked one of the younger tactical team members, who stifled a smile. "No, just regular Homeland Security," he replied. Diplomatically. By mid-afternoon, Agent Foster declared the extraction complete. "The facility has been cleared of classified material," she informed Jessica. "The entrance will remain, but we've disabled the electronic locks. You'll have access to the structure, but we recommend limiting time spent in the laboratory area due to potential air quality concerns without the ventilation systems." As most of the team departed, Dr. Thorne remained behind with a folder of documents. "Let's go through these agreements," he said, spreading papers across the dusty reception desk. The legal language was dense, but the implications were clear. Jessica was prohibited from discussing the hidden laboratory, its previous purpose, or Dr. Hawkins's government work with anyone. Violation would constitute a federal offense. "What about Zoe?" Jessica asked. "She knows there's a secret room." "Already. Children's stories about secret rooms are hardly unusual," Dr. Thorne said with a slight smile. "As long as you don't confirm any specifics about government involvement or classified research, her natural excitement should be harmless." As Jessica signed the final document, a question that had been nagging at her surfaced. "Dr. Thorne, the city clerk mentioned Dr. Hawkins was involved in some kind of secretive research, but you described a biological countermeasures program, which is true." Dr. Thorne closed his folder carefully. Both, in a sense, Dr. Hawkins was tasked with developing defenses against potential biological threats. The facility served multiple purposes, including providing secure isolation for certain aspects of that work. The locals naturally interpreted his secrecy through their own perspectives. "Defenses against biological threats," Jessica repeated. "You mean like weapons, don't you?" That's why there's all this secrecy years later. The technologies developed here provided crucial protections against threats both foreign and domestic, Dr. Thorne said carefully. Whether that makes them weapons in the conventional sense is a matter of interpretation. What matters is that certain entities would still find the research valuable. Jessica sensed she wouldn't get a clearer answer. Well, now I have a building with a mysterious underground laboratory. Not exactly what I planned when bidding at the city auction. Dr. Thorne surprised her with a genuine laugh. Life rarely follows our plans, does it? For what it's worth, Ms. Reyes, I think you'll find this property has unexpected advantages. Besides a secret room during bad weather, you mean? Dr. Hawkins chose this location carefully, Thorne replied cryptically. The building has certain unique characteristics you might find beneficial, particularly given your background in veterinary technology. Before Jessica could press for clarification, Dr. Thorne glanced at his watch. I should join the extraction team. You have my contact information if any concerns arise. He handed Jessica a business card with just a name and phone number, no agency or department listed. As the final SUV pulled away, Jessica and Zoe stood on the front steps watching the dust settle in the parking lot. Are they coming back? Zoe asked. I don't think so, sweetie, Jessica replied absently, thinking of the small safe hidden in her sleeping bag. She hadn't mentioned it, and somehow the government team hadn't discovered it during their sweep. Can we go see the secret rooms again? Jessica hesitated. Not right now. We need to focus on making the building livable first. As evening approached, Jessica led Zoe through the clinic, examining the spaces more thoroughly. The former surgical suite could be converted into a spacious living room. 2 of the exam rooms could become bedrooms. The break room already had kitchen infrastructure that could be expanded. Can this be my room? Zoe asked excitedly, spinning in the center of a former exam room. Can we paint it yellow? Of course, Jessica smiled, relief washing over her. Despite the bizarre morning, Zoe was adapting to their new home with characteristic resilience. That night, camping again in the break room, Jessica found herself unable to sleep. The events of the day swirled in her mind: the hidden laboratory, the government's swift response, Dr. Thorne's cryptic comments about the building's unique characteristics. Once Zoe was deeply asleep, Jessica retrieved the small safe from her hiding place. In the beam of her flashlight, she examined it carefully. It was a combination safe rather than one requiring a key. Without the combination, she couldn't open it without potentially damaging whatever was inside. What had Agent Foster missed? Why hadn't they searched her personally when they suspected something was missing? Perhaps they had planted the safe for her to find some kind of test or trap. The questions multiplied with no answers forthcoming. Finally, exhaustion claimed her, and Jessica fell into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of hidden rooms and mysterious research. Morning brought a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever secrets the clinic held, her priority had to be making it livable for Zoe. She created a prioritized list: restore utilities, repair the roof, replace broken windows, assess the plumbing. As she surveyed the property in daylight, Jessica noticed details she'd missed in yesterday's chaos. The building, while neglected, had been constructed with quality materials and thoughtful design. The metal shed in the back, once unlocked with one of her newly discovered keys, contained tools and building supplies that would prove invaluable for renovations. While Zoe explored the front reception area under her watchful eye, Jessica called the utility companies to arrange reconnection. The electric company could send someone that afternoon, and the water company promised service within the week. Mom, look what I found. Zoe called, racing toward her with something clutched in her small hands. It was a framed photograph, dusty but intact, showing a group of people in lab coats standing in front of the clinic. It was behind the reception desk, Zoe explained. Jessica examined the photograph. 5 people stood smiling in front of a pristine version of her building, a grand opening banner visible above the door. The date stamped in the corner read April 2008. A handwritten note on the back listed names, including Dr. Alexander Hawkins, Director, and Dr. Eliza Chun, Research Lead. The name Chen triggered a memory. Dr. Thorne had mentioned that Dr. Hawkins had been working on biological countermeasures. Jessica had a colleague from her laboratory days, David Chun, who now worked at the University Medical Center researching immune system responses. Could there be a connection? They spent the morning clearing debris and sweeping years of dust from the main areas. By noon, the reception area was beginning to look habitable, and Jessica had discovered that the plumbing, after much sputtering, actually produced clear water. The water still works, she told Zoe excitedly. We can at least have running water until the electricity is restored. As Jessica scrubbed the reception desk, she found herself repeatedly glancing toward the storage room door. The safe weighed on her mind. What had Dr. Hawkins left behind that the government hadn't found? And why had Dr. Thorne seemed almost encouraging about the property's unique characteristics? The electric company technician arrived mid-afternoon, surprisingly unfazed by the building's condition. The old West Side clinic, he commented as he checked the breaker box. It hasn't had power in years, but the lines are still good. Had its own generator for a long time, I heard. The previous owner was prepared for emergencies. I guess, Jessica said carefully, remembering her non-disclosure agreement. More than most, the technician agreed. Dr. Hawkins was an interesting fellow. Used to pay extra for priority service whenever there were outages. He tested several outlets, frowning at the readings. Wiring's older but sound. Should be safe to restore power, though you might want to get some of these outlets updated eventually. By sunset, the clinic had electricity again. Lights flickered on in rooms that had been dark for years, and Jessica felt a disproportionate sense of accomplishment at this small victory. It's less creepy now, Zoe observed as they ate a simple dinner of sandwiches in the newly illuminated break room. After putting Zoe to bed in their makeshift sleeping area, Jessica found herself drawn once more to the hidden laboratory. With the house now quiet and the electricity restored, her curiosity about the safe became irresistible. Descending into the storage room, she approached the hidden wall panel, finding the pressure point easily now. The panel swung open with the same soft scraping sound, revealing the passage beyond. This time, Jessica had brought a proper flashlight and the small safe. The passage seemed less intimidating with better light, and Jessica moved confidently toward the laboratory door. The keypad lock was dark now, true to their word. The government team had disabled the electronic security system. Jessica tried the door handle and found it unlocked. Inside, the laboratory looked different with most of the equipment removed. Empty spaces on counters and walls showed where devices had once stood. The filing cabinets hung open, emptied of their contents. But the basic infrastructure remained: counters, sinks, built-in cabinets, and the specialized ventilation system, though it was no longer running. Jessica placed the safe on the main counter and examined it more carefully than she had during her first rushed exploration. It was a high-quality combination lock requiring 3 numbers to open, without tools to force it or expertise to crack. She needed the actual combination. She thought back to the notebook she'd found with the keys. It had contained maintenance logs and access codes. Might it also contain the combination to this safe? Returning to the storage room, Jessica retrieved the notebook from where she'd hidden it behind some supplies. Back in the laboratory, she paged through it carefully, looking for anything that might be a safe combination. Near the back, she found a page with several 3-number sequences, each labeled cryptically. One caught her eye: E's personal, followed by the numbers 17-42-33. E's could stand for emergency, Safe or executive storage, both plausible labels for a personal safe belonging to the project leader. With trembling fingers, Jessica dialed the combination. The lock clicked and the safe door swung open. Inside, cushioned in protective foam, were 3 items: a leather-bound journal, a USB drive in a protective case, and a small metal object that resembled a key but with electronic components embedded in it. Jessica opened the journal first. Unlike the clinical reports she'd glimpsed earlier, this appeared to be Dr. Hawkins's personal journal, the handwriting precise but hurried, the entries spanning from 2008 to 2016. August 10, 2008. Project Helios officially underway. Initial results promising, though ethical concerns remain. The targeting system works too well. Species specificity at 99.7% in controlled trials. December 3, 2010. Command refuses to acknowledge the implications of the cellular regeneration studies. They only want to know if the targeting vectors can be modified for offensive rather than defensive applications. If they would just review the medical potential. July 17, 2014. Permission to share findings with CDC denied again. Official stance remains strategic defense assets. 20 years of medical advancement being suppressed for hypothetical tactical advantages. The final entry, dated just days before the clinic had reportedly closed, caught Jessica's eye. March 21, 2016. They're shutting us down. Budget reallocations, they say, but I know the real reason. Too much evidence accumulated that the technology has greater potential for healing than for harm. I've secured the most critical findings where they won't think to look. The research will protect the truth until someone with the right background comes along. Jessica's hands trembled slightly as she set down the journal. Dr. Hawkins hadn't just been developing biological countermeasures as Dr. Thorne had claimed. He'd apparently discovered something with significant medical potential, something the military aspects of the program had overshadowed. And now, through some twist of fate, that research had fallen into the hands of someone with veterinary medical training, someone who might understand its implications. The USB drive likely contained data too extensive for the journal, but accessing it would require caution. Government monitoring systems had detected her entry into the laboratory. They might well monitor internet activity from this location as well. The strange electronic key remained a mystery. It had no obvious function, just a small button on one end and what appeared to be connection points on the other. Jessica carefully returned all 3 items to the safe, locked it, and took it with her as she left the laboratory. Her rational mind argued that she should stop here, return everything to its hiding place, lock the laboratory, and focus on the practical challenges of renovating her new home. But another part of her, the part that had always been drawn to research and discovery, couldn't let go of Dr. Hawkins's final words. The research will protect the truth until someone with the right background comes along. Was she that someone? And more importantly, did she want to be? Jessica slipped the journal, USB drive, and electronic key into a waterproof container she'd found in the clinic supplies and hid it beneath a loose floorboard in what would become her bedroom. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with strange laboratories and cryptic messages. Morning brought a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever secrets Dr. Hawkins had left behind, her immediate priority had to be creating a livable home for Zoe. She tackled the most pressing renovations with determination that surprised even herself. Over the next 2 weeks, Jessica transformed the former veterinary clinic with remarkable efficiency. With electricity restored, she focused on making the surgical suite into a comfortable living room, converting 2 exam rooms into bedrooms, and updating the break room into a functional kitchen. The reception area became a dining space, and one of the offices transformed into a small study. She hired Mr. Gonzalez's cousin, Miguel, for the electrical work beyond her skills. finding him competent and refreshingly uncurious about the government. Visitors. Folks around here learned not to ask too many questions about the West Side Clinic years ago, he commented while installing new light fixtures. Dr. Hawkins valued his privacy, and most neighbors respected that. Jessica enrolled. Zoe in the local elementary school, relieved to find it small and welcoming. Her daughter's respiratory issues improved dramatically in their new space with no shared walls with neighbors, no cooking fumes from adjacent apartments, and air that, while not pristine, was significantly better than their previous location. Between renovation work, Jessica took on part-time laboratory technician shifts at a nearby medical testing facility, grateful that her professional skills remained valuable. To her surprise, the former office, once cleared of debris and properly furnished, made an excellent workspace for studying the journal she'd discovered. The underground laboratory remained untouched during this time, though Jessica often found her thoughts drifting to Dr. Hawkins's cryptic final entry. What had he discovered that had greater potential for healing than for harm? And why had the government been so intent on controlling it? 1 month after their arrival, with the clinic now basically functional if not beautiful, Jessica decided it was time to investigate the USB drive. She couldn't use her home computer if the government had monitoring systems for the laboratory entrance. They might well be tracking internet activity from the property as well. How would you like to visit the library today? She suggested to Zoe over breakfast. They have a great children's section, and I need to use one of their computers for some research. At the public library downtown, Jessica settled Zoe with books and activities in the children's area, then found a computer station in a quiet corner. She inserted the USB drive with trepidation, half expecting alarms to sound or the screen to flash warnings. Instead, a simple folder structure appeared, labeled with project names that matched those she'd seen in the laboratory files. Project Cerberus, Operation Chimera, Helios Protocol. But there was another folder simply labeled Medical Applications that hadn't appeared in any of the government files. Opening this folder, Jessica found hundreds of research documents, data sheets, experimental results, and most significantly, a video file titled Final Message. With headphones plugged in, she clicked on the video. Dr. Alexander Hawkins appeared on screen, a man in his 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The timestamp showed March 25, 2016, just days before the clinic had officially closed. "If you're watching this," he began, his voice steady despite the clear tension in his expression, "then you've found my private research cache. I can only hope you're someone who will understand its significance." He explained how he had been recruited in 2008 to develop biological countermeasures, essentially ways to defend against potential bioweapon attacks. His background in veterinary pathology had made him valuable because he understood disease mechanisms across multiple species. What began as defensive research led to an unexpected discovery, Hawkins continued. The targeting mechanisms we developed, ways to make treatments affect only specific cell types, had profound implications beyond military applications. We created technology that could deliver therapeutic agents to exact cellular targets while leaving surrounding tissue completely untouched. Jessica listened intently, her medical background allowing her to grasp the significance. Such precise targeting would revolutionize treatments for cancer, autoimmune disorders, and dozens of other conditions where current therapies damaged healthy cells along with diseased ones. By 2014, I had proof of concept for treating 5 currently incurable conditions, Hawkins explained, his eyes lighting up with the passion of a true scientist. But when I proposed shifting our focus to medical applications, my funding was redirected. My superiors were only interested in the defensive and potentially offensive capabilities of the technology. The video continued for nearly 30 minutes as Hawkins detailed his research, the principles behind the targeting system, and his growing ethical concerns about how his discoveries might be used. "I couldn't destroy my life's work," he said toward the end, "but I couldn't allow it to be weaponized either. So I've created this archive of my medical research, the aspects most vital for healing rather than harming. The electronic key-in. The safe contains activation protocols for the specialized equipment I've hidden. Equipment that could resume the medical research where I left off." His final words sent a chill down Jessica's spine. "To whoever finds this, if you have the background to understand this work and the courage to continue it despite potential risks, you could help millions. The choice, of course, is yours." The video ended, leaving Jessica staring at the screen, her mind racing with implications. Dr. Hawkins hadn't just been developing weapons or defenses. He'd stumbled upon a medical breakthrough that could transform treatment for countless diseases. And now, through some twist of fate, his research had fallen into the hands of someone with the training to potentially understand it. She spent the next hour examining the research documents, her veterinary technology background allowing her to grasp the fundamental concepts, if not all the complex details. The precision targeting system Hawkins had developed could potentially revolutionize medicine if it could be developed further and brought to legitimate medical researchers. As Jessica drove home with Zoe, her thoughts tumbled over one another. What should she do with this information? The non-disclosure agreement she'd signed covered the facility and its official purpose, but did it extend to Hawkins's private research? And even if it did she have a moral obligation to bring potentially life-saving technology to the medical community? The risk was significant. If Agent Foster discovered she had Hawkins's research, she could face federal charges. She could lose her new home, her freedom, possibly even custody of Zoe, but the potential benefit was even greater. How many lives might be saved by this technology? How much suffering might be prevented? That evening, after tucking Zoe into bed in her newly painted yellow bedroom, Jessica made a decision. She would need an ally, someone with scientific credentials and resources beyond her own. Someone who could help evaluate Hawkins's research and potentially bring it to appropriate medical channels without triggering immediate government suppression. David Chun, her former colleague now working at the University Medical Center, might be that ally. The name Chen on the clinic's opening day photograph still intrigued her. Could there be a connection to Dr. Eliza Chun, who had worked with Hawkins? The next day, Jessica found herself at the University Medical Center, Zoe safely at school, looking up at the imposing research building where David Chun worked. They had been friendly colleagues years ago, before her career had been derailed by Marcus's crimes and Zoe's health issues. She had no idea if he would remember her, let alone be willing to help with something so potentially risky. Taking a deep breath, she entered the building and made her way to the immunology department. Outside a laboratory door labeled Dr. David Chun, Cellular Immunology, she hesitated, then knocked. The man who opened the door looked older than she remembered, his black hair now streaked with gray, lines of concentration etched around his eyes, but his smile of recognition was immediate and warm. "Jessica Reyes?" he said, surprise evident in his voice. "It's been, 6 years?" "At least," she replied, relieved that he remembered her. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Just the usual grant paperwork. I welcome the interruption," he said, ushering her into his cluttered office. "What brings you to the medical center? Last I heard you were working in the private sector." Jessica carefully explained her situation, the auction purchase, the veterinary clinic, her current part-time laboratory work, while omitting any mention of the secret facility or Dr. Hawkins's research. "Actually," she said, approaching her real purpose carefully, "I found something during renovations that made me think of you." A photograph from the clinic's opening day in 2008. One of the researchers was named Dr. Eliza Chun. "I wondered if she might be related to you." David's expression changed subtly, a wariness entering his eyes. My mother, he said after a moment. She was a research pathologist specializing in interspecies disease transmission. She worked at several facilities before joining the university. Why do you ask? Jessica hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. The previous owner of the clinic, Dr. Hawkins, seemed to have been doing some interesting research there. I thought your mother might have insights about the facility's history. David studied her face carefully. My mother passed away 3 years ago, he said quietly. But she spoke of Dr. Hawkins occasionally. They worked together on several projects before she joined the university faculty. He paused, seeming to make a decision. Jessica, why are you really here? My mother was very careful about what she shared regarding her work with Dr. Hawkins. She mentioned classified research and government oversight that prevented her from publishing certain findings. Jessica took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Either retreat with vague explanations or take a leap of faith. David, what I'm about to tell you could potentially put both of us at risk, she said, lowering her voice despite the privacy of his office. But I believe it could also save countless lives. Over the next 30 minutes, Jessica explained everything. The hidden laboratory, the government team's visit, the safe she'd kept hidden, and most importantly, Dr. Hawkins's research into precision-targeted cellular therapy that had been suppressed for its weapons potential. David listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly serious. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. You understand what you're describing, right? He finally said. A targeting system that can deliver therapeutic agents to specific cell types while leaving others untouched would revolutionize treatment for virtually every major disease. Cancer therapy without side effects. Autoimmune treatments that don't suppress the entire immune system. It would be the most significant medical advancement in decades. That's why I came to you, Jessica said. I have enough background to understand the basic concepts, but not to evaluate the research properly or develop it further. Dr. Hawkins seemed to believe it could help millions of people. David stood and walked to his office door, checking that it was securely closed. My mother left her research notes to me when she died, he said quietly. Notes that never made it into official publications. She mentioned a breakthrough targeting system that had been classified by the government. David had given this considerable thought. My department chair, Dr. Eleanor Wright, is not only brilliant, but also has extensive connections in both academic medicine and the biotech industry. More importantly, she has a reputation for absolute integrity. If anyone could help us navigate bringing this research to light without triggering immediate government intervention, it's her. Jessica felt a surge of anxiety. Bringing someone else in significantly increases our risk. It does, David acknowledged. But it also increases our chances of actually getting this technology to the people who need it. We have to trust someone eventually, Jessica. We can't do this alone. After much discussion, they agreed to approach Dr. Wright with a carefully edited version of their research, presenting it as a theoretical targeting system they had developed. Collaboratively without mentioning Hawkins or the hidden laboratory, Dr. Wright, a distinguished researcher in her 60s with a no-nonsense demeanor and impressive record of medical innovations, listened to their presentation with growing interest. In her private office, "If what you're showing me is accurate," she said when they finished, "this targeting precision would transform treatment paradigms across multiple medical fields. But I have to ask, how did you develop this technology without departmental resources or grant funding?" The moment of truth had arrived. David glanced at Jessica, who gave him a slight nod. "The truth is, Dr. Wright," he began carefully, "we didn't develop it. We recovered it from research that was classified and suppressed for its potential military applications." Over the next hour, they revealed the full story: Hawkins's work, the hidden laboratory, the government's intervention, and their efforts to bring the medical applications to light while the military aspects remained classified. When they finished, Dr. Wright sat in silence for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "What you've done carries significant legal risk," she said bluntly. "But the ethical imperative to develop medical technology that could save millions of lives is equally significant." She tapped her fingers thoughtfully on her desk. "I have connections at the National Institutes of Health who might help navigate the classification issues. If we can demonstrate that the medical applications are distinct from any military concerns, there might be a path forward that doesn't involve federal prosecution." Hope surged within Jessica. "You believe that's possible?" "I believe it's worth trying," Dr. Wright replied. "Sometimes doing the right thing requires courage in the face of potential consequences. From what you've shown me, this technology is too important to remain buried in classification." As Jessica drove home that evening, her mind raced with possibilities. For the first time, she could envision a path forward that didn't end in either abandoning Hawkins's life-saving research or facing federal charges. Dr. Wright's support brought legitimacy and connections that could potentially thread the needle between government, classification, and medical advancement. Pulling into the driveway of her transformed veterinary clinic, Jessica felt a profound sense of purpose. The desperate gamble she'd taken on an abandoned building had led her not just to a home for herself and Zoe, but to the opportunity to help bring revolutionary medical technology to those who needed it most. As she entered the building that had become their home, Zoe ran to greet her with excited news about a science project at school. Looking at her daughter's bright eyes and hearing her clear breathing, so different from the constant respiratory struggles of months before, Jessica knew with certainty that she had made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with newfound courage and the knowledge that sometimes life's most desperate gambles lead to its greatest opportunities. Over the next 2 months, Dr. Wright became an invaluable ally in their quest to bring Hawkins's technology to the medical mainstream. With her guidance, they refined their understanding of the targeting system and developed applications specifically for treating 3 conditions that had defied conventional medicine: an aggressive form of pediatric leukemia, a degenerative neurological disorder, and an autoimmune disease that attacked the respiratory system. "The key," Dr. Wright explained during one of their late-night strategy sessions, "is to demonstrate that these medical applications are fundamentally different from any potential military uses. We need to establish a clear ethical boundary that regulators and oversight committees can recognize." Their work progressed rapidly with the additional resources Dr. Wright discreetly made available: specialized laboratory equipment, access to tissue samples, and computational modeling systems that accelerated their research. Jessica's background in veterinary pathology proved unexpectedly valuable, as she helped bridge the gap between Hawkins's animal studies and potential human applications. "You have an intuitive understanding of cross-species disease mechanisms," David told her one evening as they reviewed promising results from their latest experiment. "It's exactly what we need to adapt this technology for human patients." Jessica's life had found a new rhythm. Mornings were devoted to her growing veterinary technician practice in the renovated front section of the clinic, providing basic care for neighborhood pets. Afternoons were spent with Zoe after school, helping with homework and enjoying their transformed home. Evenings often found her at the university laboratory with David and occasionally Dr. Wright, advancing their research on Hawkins's technology. The hidden laboratory beneath her clinic remained sealed as the government team had left it, though Jessica had carefully transferred all of Hawkins's journals and data to their university research space. The specialized equipment they'd retrieved from the storage facility was now integrated into their official research program, disguised as newly developed technology rather than recovered classified systems. Their relationship with Dr. Wright was built on careful trust. She never asked for specific details about how they had acquired Hawkins's research, focusing instead on the scientific validity and potential medical applications. This deliberate Distance provided her with plausible deniability while still allowing her to advocate for their work within the university's research hierarchy. We need to be strategic about how we introduce this technology to the wider medical community, Dr. Wright advised. Too much publicity too soon could trigger unwanted attention from the same agencies that classified Hawkins's work in the first place. They decided to begin with a small clinical trial focusing on the pediatric leukemia application, where the need was most urgent and the potential benefits most dramatic. Dr. Wright had connections at the Children's Hospital affiliated with the university, where several oncologists were desperate for new approaches to treatment-resistant cases. 6 months after Jessica had first discovered the hidden laboratory, they were ready to present their technology to a carefully selected group of medical specialists. Dr. Wright arranged a private symposium for 5 leading researchers in pediatric oncology, immunology, and medical technology. The morning of the presentation, Jessica stood in what had once been the reception area of the abandoned veterinary clinic, now transformed into a bright, welcoming living space. Through the window, she could see Zoe playing in the front yard with the rescue puppy they had adopted, a tangible symbol of how far they had come from the desperate days of potential homelessness. David arrived to pick her up, his face reflecting both excitement and apprehension about the day ahead. "Ready for this?" he asked, taking her hand. "As ready as I'll ever be," Jessica replied. "Whatever happens today, we've done everything we could to honor Hawkins's work and make it available to those who need it most." At the University Medical Center, they met Dr. Wright in the conference room where the presentation would take place. The specialized equipment had been set up for demonstrations, and their research data was organized into a compelling presentation that highlighted the technology's unprecedented precision and effectiveness. "Remember," Dr. Wright reminded them, "focus on the medical applications. If questions arise about the technology's origins, keep your answers general. We're presenting this as a collaborative research project developed through your combined expertise." The specialists arrived distinguished physicians and researchers, with decades of experience fighting the most challenging medical conditions. Dr. Wright introduced Jessica and David as innovative researchers who had developed a revolutionary targeting system for therapeutic delivery. As they began their presentation, Jessica felt a surge of confidence. This was the moment Hawkins's suppressed research would finally emerge into the light, not as a potential weapon, but as a tool for healing. David explained the fundamental principles of the targeting system, demonstrating how it could identify specific cell types based on surface markers and deliver therapeutic agents with unprecedented precision. Jessica then presented their laboratory results, showing how the system had successfully eliminated cancer cells in tissue samples while leaving healthy cells completely untouched. The specialists watched with growing excitement, their initial skepticism giving way to astonishment, as the demonstrations confirmed the extraordinary claims. Questions flew rapidly, probing the technology's mechanisms, limitations, and potential applications. This precision targeting would eliminate virtually all side effects of conventional chemotherapy, remarked Dr. Isabel Santos, the leading pediatric oncologist. For children with treatment-resistant leukemia, this could be the difference between life and death. The implications go far beyond cancer treatment, added Dr. Marcus Chin, an immunologist. This could revolutionize how we approach autoimmune disorders, degenerative conditions, even infectious diseases. As the presentation concluded, Dr. Wright stepped forward to outline their proposed clinical trial for pediatric leukemia patients who had exhausted conventional treatment options. The specialists offered unanimous support, agreeing to help navigate the regulatory approvals needed to begin human trials. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, Jessica noticed a late arrival. Slipping quietly into the back of the conference room, a woman in a tailored suit whose presence immediately triggered alarm bells. It took a moment to place her, but when recognition dawned, Jessica felt her blood run cold. Agent Diana Foster of Homeland Security was watching their presentation. Jessica nudged David discreetly, tilting her head slightly toward the back of the room. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he recognized the government agent. Dr. Wright, noticing their sudden tension, smoothly took over the close-in remarks, allowing Jessica and David to gather their materials while she engaged the specialists in conversation. As the medical experts filed out, enthusiastically discussing the technology's potential, Agent Foster approached them. "Impressive presentation, Ms. Reyes, Dr. Chen," she said, her tone professional but with an unmistakable edge. "I'd like a word with you both, privately." Dr. Wright intervened smoothly. "I'm Dr. Eleanor Wright, Chair of Immunology. Is there something I can help with? These are researchers in my department." "This is a matter of national security, Dr. Wright," Foster replied. "It concerns classified technology that appears to have been repurposed." The conference room fell silent as the last of the specialists departed, leaving Jessica, David, Dr. Wright, and Agent Foster alone with the evidence of their work spread across the presentation tables. "How did you find us?" Jessica asked quietly. "Monitoring systems," Foster replied. "When specialized equipment is activated, it generates certain signatures. Dr. Hawkins's devices have unique operational patterns that triggered our alerts when you began using them regularly." David stepped forward. "Whatever concerns you have about classification, Agent Foster, this technology has extraordinary medical potential. You've seen the presentation. It could save countless lives." "I'm well aware of its potential, Dr. Chen," Foster said. "That's precisely why it was classified in the first place. Power like this can be weaponized as easily as it can heal." Dr. Wright had been observing this exchange with keen attention. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "we could discuss this situation more productively in my office, rather than in an open conference room." Foster nodded curtly, and they made their way to Dr. Wright's spacious office on the top floor of the research building. Once the door was closed, the Homeland Security agent turned to face them directly. "Ms. Reyes, you signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding the classified facility at your property," she said. "That agreement extended to any materials or information derived from that facility." "I understand that," Jessica replied, gathering her courage. "But Dr. Hawkins left behind research that was specifically separated from the classified program research focused entirely on medical applications that could save millions of lives." Foster's expression remained neutral. "That wasn't his decision to make. The entire research program was classified under national security provisions." "With respect, Agent Foster," David interjected, "classification is meant to protect national security, not suppress medical breakthroughs that could alleviate human suffering. The targeting system we've developed has been completely divorced from any potential military applications." Dr. Wright, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "Agent Foster, I've been in medical research for over 30 years. What we witnessed today represents a once-in-a-generation breakthrough. Surely there must be a way to make this technology available for its life-saving potential while addressing your security concerns." Foster studied them thoughtfully. "You understand that I could have brought a tactical team to shut this down and arrest all of you," she said finally. "The fact that I came alone suggests I might be open to alternatives." Hope flickered through Jessica's anxiety. "What kind of alternatives?" "There's been a shift in thinking at certain levels of government," Foster explained. "Some officials have begun questioning whether our classification system sometimes impedes valuable innovations that could benefit society." She paced slowly across Dr. Wright's office. "A pilot program has been established to reevaluate certain classified technologies for potential civilian applications. Dr. Hawkins's research was actually on the list for reconsideration." "So you're not here to shut us down?" David asked, hardly daring to believe it. "I'm here to evaluate what you've done and determine next steps," Foster replied. "Technically, you've violated federal law by accessing classified technology. But you've also potentially advanced that technology in directions that align with emerging government priorities for medical innovation." Dr. Wright seized the opening. "What if we proposed a formal research partnership? The university could establish a specialized laboratory with appropriate security protocols, allowing this work to continue under proper oversight." Foster considered this. "That might be possible, but it would require full disclosure of everything you've discovered, developed, or modified based on Hawkins's research." Jessica and David exchanged glances. Everything they had worked for hung in the balance. "If we agree to such a partnership," Jessica asked carefully, "would the focus remain on medical applications? Would the technology be made available to patients who need it?" "That would be the primary objective of the civilian application track," Foster confirmed, "though certain security protocols would still apply." A tentative plan began to take shape during the hours that followed. The university would establish a secure research facility where work on the targeting system could continue, under joint oversight from medical authorities and security agencies. Jessica and David would lead the research team, with Dr. Wright serving as program director. "There will be conditions," Foster warned as the discussion concluded. "Background checks for all personnel, security clearances, monitoring of all research activities, and review of publications before release. As long as the primary goal remains bringing this technology to patients who need it, we can work with those conditions," David said, looking to Jessica for confirmation. She nodded, feeling a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and lingering apprehension. Dr. Hawkins wanted this technology to heal, not harm. This partnership seems like a way to honor that intention while respecting national security concerns. As Agent Foster prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "One last thing, Ms. Reyes. The hidden laboratory at your property will need to be properly decommissioned and sealed permanently. A team will arrive tomorrow morning to handle it." Jessica felt a pang at the thought of losing access to the space where this journey had begun, but nodded her agreement. The laboratory had served its purpose. It had delivered Hawkins's legacy into her hands, and now that legacy would continue in a new form. After Foster's departure, the three of them sat in stunned silence for several moments. "Well," Dr. Wright said finally, "that was certainly not how I expected this day to end. Do you think we can trust her?" Jessica asked. "This partnership she's proposing, will it really protect the medical applications of the technology?" Dr. Wright considered the question carefully. "In my experience, government agencies rarely offer compromise unless they see clear benefit. The fact that Agent Foster came alone and offered a partnership rather than arrests suggests genuine interest in the medical potential you've demonstrated." "It's a risk," David acknowledged, "but perhaps a smaller risk than continuing in secret, always looking over our shoulders." The following weeks brought rapid changes. True to Foster's word, a government team arrived to permanently seal the hidden laboratory beneath Jessica's clinic, though they allowed her to retain her home and veterinary practice without interference. Meanwhile, the university allocated a secure wing of the medical research building for the new program, officially titled the Precision Therapeutics Initiative. Security systems were installed, protocols established, and a carefully vetted research team assembled under Jessica and David's leadership. To Jessica's surprise, one of the first new team members was Dr. William Thorne from DARPA, the same government scientist who had accompanied Agent Foster during their first visit to the clinic. "Agent Foster suggested I might be useful as a liaison between your research team and the security agencies," he explained during their first meeting in the new facility. "I've actually been advocating for the declassification of Hawkins's medical research for several years." "You have?" Jessica asked, astonished. "The clinic gave us shelter, but what we found there gave us purpose. I wouldn't change a single step of the path that led us here." As they rejoined the celebration, Jessica felt a profound sense of gratitude for the desperate circumstances that had driven her to bid on an abandoned building, for the courage to explore what lay hidden there, and for the allies who had helped transform a classified secret into a medical revolution. What had begun as her darkest hour had become her greatest opportunity to make a difference in the world. Sometimes, she reflected, our most desperate gambles lead to our most meaningful victories. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.